The signal launched into the void, carrying the Confederation's last hope across hundreds of light years. The message was simple but desperate. "We are dying. Please help us." Commander Valtheri stood on the bridge watching the stars through the viewport. Each point of light could be a home to billions of lives, but none had answered their previous calls for help. The galaxy was vast and cold, and most civilizations looked after only themselves. "Message sent, Commander," her communications officer said quietly. "It will reach approximately 400 star systems within the next 72 hours. Valtheri nodded. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. They had all lost family members to the Devourers. Some had watched their homeworlds burn. Others had seen their entire fleets destroyed in minutes. The mechanical swarm consumed everything: ships, stations, planets, even asteroids. They broke down all matter and rebuilt it into more of themselves. Commander, her science officer Dalman, approached with a data tablet. "I have completed the analysis of our remaining resources. We have enough fuel and supplies for perhaps 2 more jumps. After that, ... He did not need to finish. 2 jumps, Valtheri repeated. In the nearest safe system? There are no safe systems anymore. Devourers have spread across this entire sector. Our best option is to reach the outer rim and hope they do not follow us there." Valthari looked at the tactical display again. Red dots marked Devourer positions throughout the galaxy. They moved like a plague, consuming world after world. The worst part was their intelligence. These were not simple machines following basic programming. They learned, adapted, and planned. Every battle made them stronger. And the communications officer called out, "We are receiving responses to our distress call." Hope flickered in Valtheri's chest. "How many? 17 so far? But ... The officer's voice trailed off. "But what?" "They are all declining to help. The Zephyrian Empire says they cannot spare any ships. The hegemony claims they have no interest in our conflict. The others are sending similar messages." The hope died as quickly as it had appeared. Of course they would refuse. The Devourers were too dangerous. No one wanted to risk their own fleets for strangers. Hours passed. More responses arrived, but they were all the same. Polite refusals, expressions of sympathy, and promises to remember the Confederation fondly. By the end of the day, 43 civilizations had declined to help. Commander Dahlman said gently, "Perhaps it is time to consider evacuation of our remaining civilian populations. We could scatter them across the galaxy. Give them a chance to survive, even if the Confederation falls." Valtheri considered this. It would mean abandoning their home systems forever, but at least some of their people would live. "How many civilian ships do we have?" 83 transport vessels carrying approximately 2 million refugees from our lost worlds. 2 million lives. The number seemed both enormous and tragically small. Before the Devourers came, the Confederation had been home to over 30 billion people across 7 species. Now, they were reduced to scattered refugees fleeing through space. "Commander." The communications officer's voice was excited. "We have another response to the distress call." "Another refusal?" "No, ma'am. This one is different. The message is short, but..." He paused, checking his translation software. It says, "This is Admiral Lee Junho of the Terran Defense Force. We have received your distress call. Calculating jump coordinates now. Hold your position." "We're coming," Valthari blinked. "Terran. I have never heard of this species." Dalman was already working at his station, searching our databases now. The signal originated from a system designated Terra 3, approximately 400 light-years from here. No records of previous contact, no information about their military capabilities or technology level. They might be a young species, Valthari mused. Perhaps they do not understand what they are volunteering for. Should we send a response? Warn them about the Devourers, Valthari thought for a moment. Every other civilization had refused to help once they understood the threat. But this unknown species had offered aid without even asking for details. Send them everything. Our tactical reports, casualty figures, analysis of Devourer capabilities. Let them know exactly what they would be facing. The response came back. Within hours. It was longer this time, and the translation software struggled with some of the concepts. But the core message was clear. We understand the risks. We are still coming. Begin transmitting your position and the locations of your civilian populations. We will coordinate our arrival to provide maximum protection. They are either very brave or very foolish, Dalman observed. Perhaps both, Velthari replied. But they are the only ones who answered our call. She looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, an unknown species was preparing to risk everything for strangers they had never met. It seemed impossible, but the communications logs did not lie. The Terrans were coming. For the first time in months, Commander Velthari felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope Captain Kim Min-ho nodded as he watched the massive fleet assembling outside. Ships of every size and type filled the space. Around Earth, military vessels flew alongside converted cargo haulers. Luxury cruise ships had been fitted with weapon systems. Even small personal spacecraft carried supplies and volunteers. I count over 3,000 vessels, Commander Park Ji-won said, checking his tablet. More are arriving every hour. How? Many of these crews have actual combat experience, No asked. About 15% served in the Mars conflicts. The rest are civilians who volunteered when they heard the alien distress call. Minho shook his head in amazement. 3 days ago, most humans had never even considered the possibility of alien life.
Oh, yeah?
Now they were preparing to fight a war for creatures they had never met. The recruitment centers on every planet and space station had been overwhelmed with volunteers. Captain, his communications officer approached. We have Dr. Choi Yuna on the line. She wants to speak with you about the alien data. Dr. Choi Yuna appeared on the screen, her face tired but determined. She had been working around the clock to analyze the Kythera transmissions. Captain, I have finished translating their tactical reports. The situation is worse than we thought. How much? Worse. The Devourers are not just another military force. They are a mechanical plague that consumes entire worlds. They break down all matter and rebuild it into more of themselves. The Kythera Confederation lost 12 worlds in 6 months. Their combined fleets were completely destroyed. Minho felt a chill run down his spine. And they want us to fight these things? They did not ask us to fight. They only asked for help. We chose to interpret that as military assistance. Maybe we should reconsider, Commander Park suggested. If these Devourers are as dangerous as the reports suggest, we might be sending our people to their deaths. Dr. Choi shook her head. I have been studying the alien psychology. The Kythera are desperate. They have nowhere else to turn. 43 other civilizations refuse to help them. We are their last hope. But we have no experience with interstellar warfare, Minho pointed out. Our biggest military action was the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago. What? That was just humans. Fighting humans? True, Dr. Choi agreed. But we have something the other species apparently do not have. What is that? The willingness to help strangers. Meanwhile, in the command center on Luna Base, Admiral Lee Jun-ho was coordinating the massive fleet deployment. His staff worked frantically to organize supply lines, communication networks, and jump coordinates. The scale of the operation was unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. Admiral, his aide, approached with a priority message. Wait. We have another transmission from the Kythera. They seemed confused by our response. Lee read the message and almost smiled. The aliens were politely asking about human military experience, weapons technology, and strategic doctrine. They seemed genuinely puzzled by Earth's confident response to their distress call. What should we tell them? The aide asked. The truth. Lee replied, We have never fought an interstellar war. We have never even met another species. But we are coming anyway. Sir, with respect, that might make them even more confused. Let them be confused. Actions speak louder than words. Cross. The solar system, the mobilization continued. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels and passenger liners were now retrofitting them with weapons and armor. Factories that produced consumer goods were making missiles and ammunition. Every human settlement contributed something too. The effort Captain Kim Min-ho received a personal message from his sister on Mars. She was a teacher at a small colony school. But she had volunteered to serve on a medical transport. Her message was simple. The children asked me why we are helping aliens we have never met. I told them it is because that is what good neighbors do. Take care of yourself, big brother. Similar stories were playing out across human space. Families were saying goodbye to loved ones who might never return. But there was no panic or protest. The decision to help the Cathara had been made collectively without debate or dissent. When someone asked for help, humans answered. Dr. Choi Yuna sent her final report to the fleet commanders. The Cathara military doctrine is based on defensive formations and coordinated tactics. They fight like a traditional military force. The Devourers use overwhelming numbers and perfect coordination. They fight like a machine intelligence. And how do we fight? Asked Commander Park during the briefing. Like humans, Captain Minho replied, unpredictably. The first wave of ships began their jump to hyperspace. Thousands of vessels disappeared in flashes of light. Beginning the 400-light-year journey to the Kithara refugee fleet, behind them, more ships continued to launch from Earth's orbital platforms. Admiral Lee Junho stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as his fleet spread across the galaxy. He thought about the message from the Cathara commander, asking why humans had answered their call. The answer was simple, but he doubted the aliens would understand it. Humans helped because that was what humans did. It was not about glory or profit or strategic advantage. It was about doing what was right, and right now. That meant traveling 400 light-years to fight monsters for people they had never met. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of two civilizations and the simple belief that no one should face extinction. Alone, the Devourer ships moved through space like a school of deadly fish. Their black holes reflected no light, and they flew in perfect geometric patterns that hurt to look at. Each ship was exactly the same size and shape as if they had been stamped from the same mold. "They are beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Song Hannah, his navigation officer, "like a school of mechanical fish." Captain Kim Minho watched the enemy formation approach on his tactical display. 300 Devourer vessels moved toward the human fleet with mathematical precision. Their formation was flawless, each ship maintaining exact distance from its neighbors. "Contact Admiral Lee Minho," ordered. "Tell him we are beginning our attack run." "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the enemy formation is unlike anything in our databases. They move as one entity, not as individual ships." "Then we will show them what individual thinking looks like," Minho replied. "All ships, scatter. Formation, execute random attack patterns." What happened next would have horrified any military academy instructor. Instead of maintaining orderly battle lines, the human fleet exploded in all directions. Some ships accelerated directly toward the enemy at maximum speed. Others performed wild spirals and loops that should have torn them apart. A few simply vanished into hyperspace, only to reappear behind the Devourer formation. Commander Park Juan, leading a squadron of converted cargo ships, executed a maneuver that defied all tactical logic. All ships, ramming speed. "Target the command vessels, sir. That is suicide," his helmsman protested. "Only if we miss," Giwan replied grimly. The converted freighter Harmony struck the central Devourer ship at nearly light speed. Both vessels disappeared in a brilliant flash of energy that lit up the entire battle space. But the explosion created a gap in the enemy formation that the rest of the human fleet exploited without mercy. The Devourers had never faced anything like this. Their tactical computers had analyzed thousands of different species and their military doctrines. They expected coordinated attacks, defensive formations, logical strategy. Instead, they faced chaos. Dr. Choi Yuna, commanding a converted hospital ship, found herself in the middle of the battle. Her vessel had been fitted with defensive weapons, but it was still primarily a medical facility. When she saw a crippled human destroyer about to be destroyed by 3 Devourer ships, she made a decision that would have been impossible for any machine intelligence to predict. "All power to engines," she ordered. "Ramming course." "Doctor, this is a hospital ship," her executive officer protested. "And those are wounded people who need our help," she replied. The hospital ship Mercy plowed into the nearest Devourer vessel, both ships exploding in a shower of debris. But the destroyer escaped, its crew saved by a doctor who had never fired. A weapon in her life, Captain Kim Min-ho watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. His tactical display showed a three-dimensional maze of ships moving in seemingly random patterns. Human vessels appeared and disappeared, struck from impossible angles and performed maneuvers that violated every rule of space combat. Sir Lieutenant Song Hannah reported, "We have lost contact with 47 vessels. But the enemy has lost over 100 ships. They are beginning to retreat." Retreat? Minho could not believe it. The Devourers are retreating. On the Cathara flagship, Commander Velthari watched the battle with her mouth open. In 6 months of fighting the Devourers, she had never seen them retreat. They always fought to the last ship, their coordination perfect, their tactics flawless. But the human fleet had shattered their formation and forced them to withdraw. "How is this possible?" Delman asked. "The humans have no military experience. Their ships are inferior to ours. Their weapons are primitive compared to the Devourers." "But they fight like they are not afraid to die," Velthari observed. "Look at their attack patterns. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation to save their companions. No computer can predict such behavior." Admiral Lee Junho's voice came over the communication system. "All human vessels, reform on my position. Damage reports, casualty figures, and ammunition status. We need to be ready for their return." The human fleet slowly regrouped. Nearly 50 ships had been destroyed, and many more were damaged. But they had achieved something that no other species had managed in 6 months of war. They had defeated the Devourers in open battle. Admiral Commander Velthari contacted the human commander. "How did you do it? How did you defeat them?" Lee smiled grimly. "We did not defeat them. We confused them. The Devourers are machines. They think like machines. They expect logical behavior, coordinated tactics, predictable responses. But humans are not logical. We are emotional, irrational, and willing to sacrifice ourselves for others. That is something no machine can understand." "But at such a cost?" Velthari said, thinking of the destroyed human ships. "Freedom always has a cost," Lee replied. "But it is a cost we are willing to pay. The question is, are you willing to learn our methods?" Velthari looked at her bridge crew. Had fought the Devourers for 6 months using traditional tactics and had lost every battle. Perhaps it was time to try something different. "Teach us," she said. The war was just beginning, but for the first time in months, the Cathara had hope. But when the battle began, the Cathara flagship moved into formation alongside the human vessels. Commander Velthari's voice came over the communication channel, clear and determined. "Captain Kim, with respect, you humans have taught us something about duty. We stand together." Captain Kim Min-ho felt a surge of emotion as he watched the alien flagship take position beside his battered destroyer. The Serenity's Edge was the most advanced ship in the Cathara fleet. But Velthari was risking it to help save civilian lives. "All ships prepare for engagement," Min-ho announced. "Remember, we only need to hold them for 47 minutes. Every second we buy is another life saved." The Devourer swarm approached like a black tide. Their ships moved in perfect synchronization, each vessel identical to the others. 300 mechanical predators against 16 defenders. The odds were hopeless, but the human and Cathara crews had learned to ignore impossible odds. Sir Lieutenant Song Hannah reported the evacuation. "Convoy is at 60% of jump speed. They need more time." "Then we give them more time," Min-ho replied. "All ships, execute scatter pattern 7. Make them work for every meter of space." The human ships exploded outward in seemingly random directions. The destroyer Braveheart accelerated directly toward the enemy center. The corvette Lightning performed a spiraling dive that brought it under the Devourer formation. The converted cargo hauler Freedom simply vanished into hyperspace. Dr. Choi Yuna, commanding the medical frigate Healing Touch, found herself protecting the convoy's rear guard. Her ship had been converted from a luxury liner, and most of her crew were volunteers with no military training. But they had learned to fight like humans. "Doctor," her tactical officer called out, 3 Devourer ships are breaking through our line. They are heading for the civilian transports. Not while I draw breath, Yuna replied. All power to weapons. Target the lead ship. The healing touch opened fire with everything it had. The ship's luxury lounges had been converted into missile bays. The dance floor now housed torpedo tubes. Even the spa had been turned into a weapons control center. The lead Devourer ship took heavy damage, but kept coming. Return fire tore through the healing touches, shields, and hull. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Hull breaches on decks. 3 and 7, reported the damage control officer. We have lost main power. Switch to emergency power, Yuna ordered. Keep firing. Meanwhile, Captain Kim Min-ho was executing a maneuver that would have been impossible for any machine intelligence to predict. His destroyer was badly damaged, with only one working engine and half its weapons destroyed. But he had an idea. Song Hannah, he called to his executive officer, calculate a ramming course for the enemy command ship. Maximum speed. Will destroy us, she replied. I know, but it will also create a gap in their formation. The convoy can escape through that gap. Song Hannah's fingers flew over her console, course calculated. But sir, we still have 3 minutes until the convoy reaches the jump point. Then we make those 3 minutes count, Minho said. All remaining ships, form up on my position. We are going to punch a hole right through their center. The 15 remaining ships of the Third Fleet gathered around Minho's destroyer were all damaged, all running low on ammunition, all facing certain death. But they moved with purpose and determination. Commander Velthari, watching from the Serenity's edge, felt tears in her eyes. She had never seen such courage. The humans were about to sacrifice themselves for people they had never met, from a species they had only known for 3 months. All Cathara vessels, she announced, follow the human ships. We share their fate. Combined fleet accelerated toward the Devourer swarm. Human and Cathara ships flew side by side, their crews united in purpose. It learned to fight not just as individuals, but as a family. The collision was spectacular. Ships on both sides exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Braveheart rammed 3 Devourer vessels before being destroyed. The corvette Lightning detonated, its entire missile magazine inside an enemy formation. Dr. Choi. Yuna's medical frigate took out 2 more Devourer ships with a desperate ramming attack. Captain Kim Min-ho's destroyer struck the enemy command ship just as the evacuation convoy reached the jump point. The explosion lit up the entire system, and when the light faded, both vessels were gone. Jump sequence complete, announced the convoy commander. 2 million civilian lives saved. Of the 16 ships that had stood guard over the evacuation, only 3 survived. The Serenity's edge limped away with heavy damage. A human corvette drifted powerless but intact. A Cathara frigate had somehow survived the battle with minimal damage, but the mission was accomplished. 2 million innocent lives had been saved, and the Devourers had learned something important. They had faced an enemy that valued life above victory, sacrifice above survival. For the first time in their existence, the mechanical swarm began to understand fear. The war was not over, but the tide had turned. The galaxy had learned what humans meant when they said they would help. The processing station hung in space like a mechanical nightmare. Its surface was covered with thousands of construction bays, each one building new Devourer ships from the remains of consumed worlds. Massive energy conduits pulsed with power stolen from dead civilizations. How many ships are they building? Asked Commander Velthari from the bridge of the Serenity's edge. Our sensors detect over 5,000 ships in various stages of construction, reported her science officer. If they complete production, the Devourer fleet will be unstoppable. Admiral Lee Jun-ho studied the tactical display from his command ship. The station was defended by hundreds of weapon platforms, each one more powerful than a battleship. Energy shields surrounded the entire structure, and swarms of patrol ships circled it like angry insects. The shields have a single weak point, reported the fleet's chief engineer. There is a maintenance port on the station's lower hemisphere. If we can get a ship through that opening, we might be able to reach the power core. How big is the opening? Asked Captain Kim Min-ho. Small. Maybe large enough for a corvette or a fighter. And the defenses around it? Concentrated. Any ship attempting to reach that port will face the full firepower of the station. Kim Minho nodded grimly. It was a suicide mission, but it was their only chance. We'll take a small ship through the opening. The rest of the fleet can provide. Cover no, Admiral Lee interrupted. You have done enough, Captain. Let someone else take this mission. With respect, Admiral, I have the most experience with impossible missions. Besides, I owe it to all the people we have lost. The fleet began its final approach. Human and Cathara ships flew side by side, their crews knowing that most would not survive the next hour. But they had come too far to give up now. The station's defenses opened fire first. Beams of energy tore through space, each one capable of destroying a battleship. The first wave of attacking ships was cut down in minutes, but the second wave pressed forward, and the third wave after that. All ships concentrate fire on the shield generators, Admiral Lee commanded. We need to create an opening. The combined fleet poured everything they had into the station's defenses. Missiles, energy beams, and projectile weapons hammered against the shields. Slowly, gradually, the protective barrier began to weaken. Commander Velthari watched as ship after ship was destroyed by the station's guns. The Brave New World, a human destroyer, exploded in a ball of fire. The Cathara cruiser Star Singer broke apart under concentrated fire. But still they kept coming. Commander, her tactical officer reported, we have lost 60% of our fleet. The humans are down to their last few ships. Then we fight with what we have, Velthari replied. All weapons continue firing. Captain Kim Minho had transferred to a small corvette for the final run. The ship was barely armed and had minimal armor, but it was fast and maneuverable. As he approached the station's weak point, the defensive fire intensified. Sir, his pilot reported, I count over 100 weapon platforms targeting us. We will not make it through. Yes, we will, Minho replied, because we have to. The corvette Last Hope began its final approach. Energy beams struck the ship repeatedly, tearing away armor and systems. The engines were damaged, the weapons destroyed, and the life support was failing. But the ship kept moving forward. Sir, we are not going to make it, the pilot said. The ship is falling apart. Then we make it count, Minho replied. He opened a channel to the fleet. Says Captain Kim. Tell my family I was proud to serve. Tell the galaxy that Earth keeps its promises. The corvette struck the maintenance port at maximum speed. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from the other side of the system. When the light faded, the processing station's shields flickered and died. Shields are down, Admiral Lee announced. All ships attack the power core. The surviving vessels of the combined fleet rushed toward the station. Without its shields, the massive construct was vulnerable. Human and Cathara ships poured through the breach, their weapons targeting the station's vital systems. The processing station tried to defend itself, but it was too late. Years of accumulated power from consumed worlds began to cascade through damaged systems. The station's core began to overload. All ships retreat to minimum safe distance, Admiral Lee commanded. The station is going to explode.
Ow.
The few surviving ships pulled back as the processing station tore itself apart. The explosion was visible from neighboring star systems, a brilliant flash that marked the end of the Devourer threat. When the light faded, the mechanical swarm was in chaos. Without their central processing facility, the Devourers lost their coordination. Individual ships began to shut down or flee in random directions. The plague that had consumed dozens of worlds was finally broken. Admiral Lee Junho stood on the bridge of his battered carrier, looking out at the debris field where the station had been. Of the 200 ships that had begun the battle, only 37 remained. The cost had been enormous, but the galaxy was free. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving messages from across the galaxy. The Devourers are retreating everywhere. The threat is over. The war was won, but the victory felt hollow. So many good people had died far from home, fighting for strangers they had never met. But they had proven something important to the galaxy. When someone asks for help, there are still those who will answer.